Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm super excited to interview Samaira Mehta. She is based out of California, and at 7 years old, she has created a board game called CoderBunnyz that teaches basic coding concepts to kids. And 2 years later, she launched CoderMindz, which she calls the first ever artificial intelligence board game. Well, she is still a teenager today, and she already is not just running one business, but also launching other really cool initiatives related to kids and coding. So I'm super excited to talk with her today and learn about her story, her aspiration, and what inspires her. So welcome, Samaira.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. So tell me a bit of background of, what inspired you to start CoderBunnyz?
Yeah, so I think my main inspiration behind just creating CoderBunnyz was my love of board games and my passion for computer coding. Now I thought, if we can't bring a physical board game onto a computer coding screen, why not bring the computer coding onto a board game? And at that time, I was sort of playing around with this idea because when I was first introduced to coding, I immediately loved it. But when I started talking to my friends about it, I saw that they didn't have the same passion as I did. So I thought, coding is something so fun, there needs to be a way to make it fun for other people who don't think it is something fun. So I think that's when the idea sparked that, why not create a board game? I mean, all kids enjoy playing board games. Why not put coding onto a board game and show kids how fun coding can be? And that's, I think, was my main inspiration behind creating CoderBunnyz.
That's fantastic. And I'm a huge believer of kind of scratching your own itch type of thing where, you are the target audience of your product and you understand how to make things fun and make coding fun for fellow kids, fellow teenagers. And so before we dive deeper into CoderBunnyz, let's take a step back and understand more about Samaira. How old are you right now? How long have you been doing this? Yeah, tell us more about your background.
Sure. My name is Samaira Mehta. I'm 12 years old. I'm currently a sixth grader. I've been doing coding since I was 6 years old. And now, I'm 12 years old and I'm still continuing towards working towards my goals and coding and, creating board games. And basically the overall idea of making learning fun through things that kids enjoy, through things they can really connect with.
I read somewhere that you learned how to code inspired by your father, who's an engineer. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, sure. So when I was 6 years old, my dad did a prank on me. He showed me something on his computer, which had one button, and then there was a command which said, "Press this if you're beautiful." Now, he told me to give it a try, but when my mouse pointer actually touched the "You're beautiful" command, it just disappeared. So I was like, how did you do that? Am I not beautiful? What's going on here? I was really confused what was going on. And my dad told me that he actually used something called coding to create this. And I think that was when I was first really excited about coding because I wanted to be able to prank my friends in a similar way. So my first line of code was actually just, being able to create this prank that my dad first introduced to me. The way he first introduced me to coding, my first line of code was actually just that prank again. And then, I played it with my friends and they were also confused at first. And then I told them, this is actually made towards with coding. And then they're like, oh, coding? For me, when I was introduced to that wasn't fun. When for me, I was like, how is that possible? Coding always seemed so fun for me. And, that led to sort of my idea for the board game.
Amazing. And do you still have that, prank game somewhere? Would love to take a look at that.
I probably have it, but I don't know if I could pull it up right now. I'd have to probably look into it.
Did you create it? Which platform did you create it at? Is it a Scratch project or?
Yeah. So my dad actually, when he first introduced it to me, it was just a simple Scratch project, but I actually first started out with Scratch, just block coding and really putting it together, understanding the keywords, the bit of the syntax, how it is all put together, the functions, how they work, how the loops work, things like that. And from there, I moved on to Python, and I think I recreated this game in Python as well.
Great. how did you pick up Python from scratch? Like, I want to learn a little bit more about your journey of learning to code. And, you're obviously very passionate about getting more kids to code. And how did you, like, since the day that you learned about coding, the concept of coding from your father, walk us through your journey of, discovering Scratch and then moving on to Python.
Sure. So the day I was introduced to coding, I was 6, and my dad just sort of showed me the code. It took him to create something like this, and now for me, at first it seemed, whoa, I have to like learn all of that to be able to create just a simple prank. So at first it seemed a bit overwhelming. And my dad said, okay, well, if you want to learn how to do this, it's actually not as hard as it looks. I can teach you. And then he promised me that the next day he would teach me how to create it. Now, I wanted to do it before that. So what I started doing was, later that night, what I did, I went on the computer and I started, trying to create a similar thing. I started out with one of the hardest projects possible. And I was really frustrated because I couldn't do it. I didn't understand anything. And I thought, I don't want to ask my dad for help because he said that he was going to help me the next day, and I wanted to show him that I could create it myself. But I was impossible, and I got really frustrated. So I didn't really feel like, doing the prank the next day, like I didn't feel like learning how my dad created that. And I told my dad the whole story of how I was actually planning, I would try to do it, but it didn't work. And my dad told me what I did. He loved, my passion towards it, but he said it's really important to start with the basics. If you go with the extreme, hardest problem, there's no way you're going to be perfect at it the first time. And I think, nowadays when people ask me, what's your advice for people who are starting out with coding, it is that don't start with the hardest projects. Start with something simple, something you can understand. So anyways, my dad started teaching me a bit of Scratch from there, and we created that project, and from there I started creating other projects, very simple, even like with the templates that Scratch gave me, just like Catch the Apple or something as simple as that. And I started moving on from there. And, today, now I teach my brother, who is currently 8 years old. I teach him what my dad taught me. So it's sort of passing on like the legacy. But from there, what I did is I started doing Python. And I think this transition between Scratch and Python was pretty smooth because for me, it was, I understood the concept. I understood the basic. I understood the concepts when I was doing Scratch. So when it was applied to Python, it was so much simple. The only thing I needed to learn was a bit of the syntax and maybe a few more commands, and that are more advanced in today's code. So from there, my dad, he sat with me, and no matter how frustrated I got that I couldn't understand it, my dad was always there, to help me, to guide me. And then from there, I started doing Python myself. I started creating my own code. Right after, the first button little thing, the prank that I created on Python, from there, my first app was just a simple calculator simulation. And then, from there, today, I still enjoy doing Python. Python is my favorite language. I believe it's very versatile and could play a huge role in things like AI, ML, and so forth. And, I've also learned a bit of Java, and I'm also currently working on the app development with Xcode. So that's Swift programming, and that's where I am today.
Amazing. Paul, Python is also my favorite language, and I feel like it's so easy to pick up, at the same time super powerful, and you can go from web programming to data science and machine learning, artificial intelligence. So it's amazing that you already dive into the deep end of that. And so that actually is a good segue into CoderMindz, which is an artificial intelligence game. And what inspired you to create that after CoderBunnyz?
Yeah, so I think, with CoderBunnyz, my main idea was always just trying to find a solution to a problem, right? And for me, that solution was a board game. So when I started out, I never really intended on creating a second board game. I sort of just let it go with the flow. I mean, if a problem arises, then maybe I would create a solution, but I didn't force anything. And I actually came across a problem when my dad, one day he came home from work and he was telling me and my brother how cool it was. He got to design the behind the scenes of the drones and the self-driving cars, which is basically the AI. So it was then my brother asked, you've told us so much about AI, but what really is it? And that got me thinking, I don't even know what AI is myself. And, I asked a few of my friends at that time, I asked them, have you heard about AI? Do you know what it is? And, at the time I still didn't know what it was. And I saw that a lot of my friends had may have heard the word AI, artificial intelligence. They may have seen like maybe the drones, some of the self-driving cars, the ideas behind it, but they didn't really know what the main point of AI was, what are the concepts behind it and things like that. So, once again, my dad gave me tips and trainings on, AI, the concepts, how it works, networks, things as simple as just when you turn in a check, people write to their fours thousands of different ways, but through AI, it could recognize that no matter how they write it, a 4 is still a 4. So I think just learning those concepts and then applying that into a board game as a simple way, once again, to teach all kids about the concepts of AI. I think that's what, where the game and the idea sort of lit up.
Great. I love that you the first creation really builds off of each other, and you tweak it, and you have a knack in bringing kind of abstract concepts of coding into tangible game to make others interested, and to entice more people to try it out and understand it. So I understand that you're not only running CoderBunnyz, but also have another initiative called Yes, a Billion Kids Can Code. Tell us more about this initiative, and what does it do, and how did you start it?
Sure. So, Yes, 1 Billion Kids Can Code. I guess the idea sort of arose when I think it was when I started doing workshops with my CoderBunnyz games, and soon to be CoderMindz, and it was sort of in the process of CoderMindz, being created, but it was after I started doing workshops for CoderBunnyz. And I think the whole reason I decided to start this initiative was from the workshops, I realized how important computer science and coding is going to be for our coming generation, and I thought, there's so many amazing tools out there, it's just like, some of your own, dedicated towards just teaching kids the concepts of computer science, teaching them computer science, coding, the skills. And I realized, but there's no targeted goal. If coding is going to be so important, why isn't there a certain goal, certain reach where people want to get towards making coding accessible? So I decided, if there's nothing out there, I want to create one myself. And that's where the idea of Yes, 1 Billion Kids Can Code sort of sparked. And I think what I wanted to do with that was I have the goal of helping 1 billion kids in the world gain access to STEM and coding tools by the time I graduate from college, and that would be around 2030. And my main goal here is not just, bring CoderBunnyz or just bring CoderMindz, but I think it's just coding tools and the coding understanding, because I know that not every student will choose to become a professional coder when they grow, but I believe that a basic coding understanding will make them better thinkers, leaders, creators, and dreamers for our coming generation. So just the the basic idea of it is really important, and that's basically what my goal is.
Amazing. And how long has it been so far? And what are some initiatives that you guys have been pushing towards this goal? It's a big goal. I love that. And in 10 years time, 10 years we can achieve a lot. So yeah, tell us more.
Let me just start with my games alone. So with both CoderBunnyz and CoderMindz, so we have sold around. So we have basically, with these games, we have reached 1 million kids, and this is because each game reaches an average of 50 to possibly like 200 kids. And with these numbers, the idea is, like, let's say they reach about like 50 per, right? So 5 to 200, so about like 50. So this is because we have sold around 20,000 games so far. So 20,000 times 50 approximately is 1 million. So with these games alone, we've reached 1 million kids. And that's just with these games. There's so many amazing tools out there. There's code.org, Tinker, some of your own initiatives, some of your own goals. And just with reading their data and things like that, they've reached they've reached around 3 million students or something like that. So I think everybody is playing a huge role in this, and that it's like just small steps towards making this big goal possible. And some other things that I've been holding myself, just besides my game, one of them is, I've been doing speaker events at places like the Mobile World Congress, C2 Montreal, Google, Microsoft, and other places. And I think what this is like a platform for me to reach out to so many more amazing people and get them involved with my goals and missions, as well as, tell them about my story and my journey. And one more thing I've been doing is, recently everything has become virtual, right, because of our coronavirus. So what I've been doing, not only have I been holding my own virtual workshops, I have been training other people to hold their own as well. So I've been holding my own virtual workshops, and I've been training people to do that in their own communities as well. And I think with this, what the goal is that we can still, not stop our like a progress towards this big goal because of this disease. And one more thing I've been doing is I've been partnering with companies like Facebook, SAP, Walmart, and many others with the goal of bringing my games to every corner of the world, so even the underprivileged ones. And what I've done with these companies is that they have donated CoderBunnyz and CoderMindz games to the underprivileged libraries and schools across the world. I'm also an ambassador of ARM with their program Generation ARM to Z. And what this is, Generation ARM to Z.
Okay.
And this is a new initiative they launched recently. And what this is we have a group of young ambassadors, and what we do is we talk at places like Mobile World Congress, but recently, we've also started working towards one of the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and we've been creating projects together. And I think what this is this also, once again, speaker events has given me a reach to, to reach out to more people and get them involved. And I've also, alongside in the speaker events, been a panelist and judge. But one more important thing I've been doing is another initiative I started called Cookies with CoderBunnyz. And with this, I've been interviewing people like educators, entrepreneurs, tech leaders, or just individual people who make an impact in our community today, so kids like me can learn from their creative ways of solving problems and changing the world.
That's amazing. Well, I am so fascinated with the amount of things that is on your plate, and I completely agree that, getting 1 billion kids to code is not, there's so many different ways to reach them. To, from you personally as an example was really powerful, where, for us adults, there's only so much we can say, for example, a parent to, get their kids to sign up for coding, and whereas if they can see you as someone in their peers to share with them, your passion and why you love coding, and it's just so impactful. So I'm glad that you also highlighted your speaking commitments and also your exposure there as well. And with this, and you're a 6th grader, and I read that your mom is a co-founder of the business. So how do you manage your time in terms of being a student and also building so many different amazing initiatives?
Yeah, so I think I've been very, very fortunate to have a supportive family through this entire journey, and I think one of the main things I've been doing is, I'm the person, I am the CEO, the founder. I manage a lot of the ideas, the innovation, but my mom and my dad helped me, originally helped me reach out to the graphic designers, which helped me create the game, and with a lot of email exchange back and forth. My mom actually helps me handle the financial side. She also handles social media marketing. She is also the co-founder because of legal issues. And then my dad is my advisor, and he is somebody who's always been there for me from the very first day. He's the one who introduced me to coding, AI, and inspired me to create some of the games that I created. And, my brother, I also have a brother, and he is also really supportive, and what he does is, whether it's creating an initiative, it's creating a game, it's creating a level in the game, he's always been there to test it out, to give it a try, because, after all, he is just another kid, my targeted audience, and I want to make sure, I have the perspective of the young kids as well. So I think that's been a huge part as well. And then in terms of like time management and things like that, when I first started, I thought, it was going to be really hard. I'm just a 6th grader. I still have a lot of schoolwork. I still have extracurricular classes. And, on top of that, how will I run a business? How will I do my workshops? How will I give talks and things like that? But I think over time, if there's anything I realized, it's that time expands to accommodate in all of your passions and your priorities. And, as you asked, people ask me, how do I manage with school, homework, and more? But I think if you really love what you do, then time will expand to accommodate in all of your passions and your priorities.
I love that. This is definitely a great perspective from someone who's juggling so much at a young age. And I'm really glad you highlighted that, where, priorities is more important than, getting the priorities right is really key, and time accommodate us when we get our priorities right. So what were some of the biggest challenges being a young CEO?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges I've had being a young CEO is just my age itself. I think it's people misunderstand me. They think just because I'm a kid, just because, when I first started out, I was just 7, 8 years old. People thought, how could she have her own company? How can she hold workshops? How can she have a goal like with 1 billion kids in code? And I think that's a bias. I think that's a stereotype in a lot of communities today. I think people think just because of your age you can't do something that people older than you can do. I think, and same goes with just women. Just because I'm a girl, I can't do what a man could do. And I think now that I look back, when I first started doing workshops, I went to just a few close by libraries in my area, and I presented them, my ideas. This is my game. This is like how I would lead a workshop. What do you guys think? And originally, they're all just like, oh, we already have online coding programs, or why don't you come back next year? But now that I look back, I can really connect and relate. I feel like the reason they told me that was because they thought I was just 8. On top of that, a girl. I bet they thought, how will she lead a workshop? Who will come and listen to her, right? But over time, I realized that there are people who do not believe that age nor gender determines what you can or cannot do. And I've been fortunate enough, to get a few opportunities to do workshops from there, and from there it really took off. Now to date, I've done hundreds of workshops teaching thousands of kids, at places as like Google, Microsoft, Intel, Facebook, and many others. And that really just reminds me that even though there are still those norms, that your age means you can't do something, or your gender means that you can't do something, or your race means you can't do something, I think it's important to break those boundaries and to prove the boundaries wrong, to prove that no matter anything like that, you can do anything you dream of as long as you put your mind to it.
I love that. And, I get asked that a lot as well, on the gender side of in technology. And I love that I feel like, you have that mindset of, I am here to like make the goal bigger than ourselves. And, it doesn't matter like our age, our gender, and, the mission of what we're doing is like what drives us. Like, I don't know if that's something that would be accurately describing your statement there. And what are some of your proudest moments in building CoderBunnyz so far?
Yeah, I think overall, my proudest moment has just been seeing the smiles on kids' faces after they write their first code. I think this is a question a lot of people ask me, and I always like to say that because I feel like no matter how far you come, no matter who recognizes your game, or no matter where you've presented, or no matter how well your game has done, I think it's the roots that really matter. I think when I first started and just seeing the smiles that kids have when they finish their first code, when they win the game or whatever that may be. I think that's the most important, the best part of this entire process, because just that one simple smile shows me that the entire work I've put in has finally just paid off.
Amazing. I love that. And it's really go back to the users, right? Like the people that you're impacting, and like all the hard work goes back to impacting more children to discover the joy of coding. And so I want to go into this really interesting anecdote that I've read about the former First Lady Michelle Obama wrote you a letter, and tell us more about that.
Yeah, so when I was in second grade, 2016, I wrote Michelle Obama a letter. I told her how much of an inspiration she is to me, how much I look up to her. At the same time, some of my goals and my dreams and my missions. And she wrote back to me telling me, how important the work that I'm doing is in our world today. And, she told me that that's her, her dream is just being an inspiration. Her dream is to, be someone that kids can look up to, be a role model for young kids. And honestly, that was one of the most proud moments in my life, just seeing, I wrote a letter to the First Lady and she actually replied, like, wow. So, yeah, that was an amazing time. And, it really, I think it was just seeing that, I think if you work hard, if you put your mind to something, if you're passionate about it, it will all pay off, and things simple like that.
I love that. And, kind of getting that recognition is like, the icing on the cake, where, you already love what you do, and, having someone so inspirational to, write a letter to you, it's great note to your accomplishment. And so, yeah, like wrapping up, and what are some of the advice that you have for kids who learn to code? I know that you already mentioned a few, but yeah, like I think there's so many kids out there that, kind of get intimidated with coding. What are some advice you can share with them?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned earlier, pretty much my biggest advice would just be, start slow. Coding is not something that can be completely mastered in a day. Better yet a week. I mean, coding is something that takes time, potentially, it could be your entire life. But I think it's not feeling it's a pressure. I think if anything feels like a pressure, it's something you don't want to invest time into. You should only do something you have a heart, you have a mind towards. And if kids already enjoy coding, then my tip would be go for it. Really, I think what I really like about the kids of today's generation is we're not too scared to try something. If failure happens, it happens. There's never anything you learn from success. The only learning happens in failure. So just going for it, and instead of, worrying about failure or success, which is the outcome, worry about the experience and the chances you may have missed if you don't even try. So, just starting slow and going for it is really my main advice.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, sharing your journey with us, and your proud moments and your advice. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Samaira.
Thank you. This was really awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.